Under the present proposal, am I correct in saying that entitlements, it was a question I said earlier, but we didn't get a chance to go through it with the time limits. My understanding is that entitlements will disappear and it will be a per hectare system. Is that correct under the present proposal?
That does appear to be the case under the present proposal, yeah. There isn't any specific provision for entitlements in the proposal.
Okay, so if it's a per hectare proposal, what's going to happen? Do you know how people have lease on farms and they've leased entitlements over a period of time? Is there not going to be an awful lot of unsurety in the market from now on of someone doing a lease for 5 years or 7 years when they don't know what's going to come, sort of, if you understand me, like they don't know what's going to happen in 2028, that there's going to be a fear there and a bit of trepidation that you're not going to go into a 10-year lease because the entitlements could be gone in 2028?
Yeah, there may well be. I mean, I suppose we'll have to see what the potential impacts might be on the market as such, or on the everyday functioning of entitlements and transfer of entitlements in the meantime. But I mean, I'm not sure how people might react to that, but certainly on the basis of what's contained in the proposal, there isn't any provision for entitlements. Have
you done, my worry is that, like, I even saw today on something coming up that there's a 10-year lease in some farm somewhere. Do you understand me? It just caught my eye and there'll be probably entitlements on it. My worry is that there's people who could be sleepwalking into something, a lease in some farm somewhere. Do you understand me? It just caught my eye and there'll be probably entitlements on it. My worry is that there's people who could be sleepwalking into something, and it's how it's going to all materialise in Europe. You've no golden bowl that's going to tell you how it will be in 3 years' time, but that I'd be just fearful that there'd be farmers sleepwalking into something on a 10-year thing, and then it could all change. Like, is there any thing within the department that you're thinking about going around the country and explaining what's on the table at the moment? Yeah, it's not the finished product, but to make them aware, because I don't think a lot of farmers knows that there's a proposal that if your pension age, it's either one or the other, that it's going to be entitlements, the proposal at the moment, and we're not saying that's going to happen, but this, the proposal, would be going to per hectare, there'd be a 24% cut to the overall budget, and you have to see what you can do in that. I think there's a lot of farmers not aware of what's going on there at the moment, and I'd be afraid that they'd sign up to something in the next year or two that they might regret then for the rest of the 10-year lease. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And look, I think in a way that's probably best dealt with in terms of our engagement with stakeholders. You mentioned there about whether or not we'd be doing meetings around the country. We'll see what way we structure the engagement.
Or even if you had something that you'd send to farmers of a present proposal that no one can turn around and say, well, I didn't know this, and I've now signed a lease for 10 years and my entitlements are gone or whatever.
Yeah, well, and we are engaging on these issues with the CAP Consultative Committee that we mentioned earlier, that met for the first time in July and met again in September. That has all the stakeholders, all the farming organisations and all the relevant stakeholders on it. So it met in July, September, and we'll meet again before the end of this month. That's the kind of the primary forum, I suppose, in which we're sharing and exchanging with people around what's in the proposals from the Commission and getting people's feedback around their views on that, and that'll continue to be a regular feature of the engagement with stakeholders over the next period of time. And look, we can look at refining that or tailoring the engagement with stakeholders more widely. But I think what we'll try and do is get agreement from the Stakeholder Consultative Committee, maybe in terms of what the best structure might be to engage more widely with farmers and with other stakeholders around the detail of the regulations. At the moment, we're kind of at an early phase where we're exchanging with people and explaining what's in the regulations and getting initial reactions from people. But I think, there'll be scope to adapt and to tailor our engagement with stakeholders accordingly as we go. And we can get feedback as it stands from people on the kinds of measures there that you mentioned.
Am I correct in saying that it's about 1.6 billion a year is the pot of that you talk about? Would that be fair?
In terms of direct payments and Pillar 2 payments, altogether 1.6 billion or so, yeah.
And you're talking about, say, 20 to 24% if we go to that 320 to 360 million. Would that be fair to say?
20%. Yeah. Now that's in terms of the proposal. Now this isn't a
I understand that. I understand that fully, and I'm cautioning that part to it. But this other money from this other pocket that we're talking about, I just don't understand that side of it. Where is this coming into a fund that everyone will be pulling out at, and it's basically whoever is the best fighter gets the most out of it?
Well, I suppose that might be putting it too simply, but look, at the end of the day, the NRP provides for this general allocation for member states, and
what's NRP? In national
regional partnership plans.
Right.
So the fund is provided for, and like I said, there is a ring-fenced amount for CAP. And yes, there will have to be a debate if that structure remains in place, if it remains unchanged at the end of the negotiations, notwithstanding, again, like I said, some of the difficulties that are surrounding that and the questions that member states have around that. But if that were to survive the process, then yes, you would be into a point then where nationally we would have to decide, okay, there's a ring-fence allocation for CAP. What is the scope, for instance, for bringing more money in from the wider NRP allocation? And what does that mean in terms of the overall balance across the various funds? And how do we maybe, first of all, ensure that we can maximise the increase that we can get for CAP, and then make sure that the CAP's integration, if you like, with other funds is managed appropriately and to the maximum benefit. So again, there would be a process there, no doubt.
I presume that the department would be like, we were given, I think, like between 130 and 150 million out of the Department of Agriculture to overseas aid every 5 years. Wouldn't that be fair to say? I presume you're going to be looking at funds like that, because if we're going to shaft our own farmers, we're hardly going to be sending money out of the country.
Well, I'm not going to speculate on how the department might spend its money in the future, Deputy, or where cuts or otherwise might be made to fund different measures. I mean, I think we'll be working within the confines of what we can as far as the allocation is concerned from the EU budget.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, can I get you? Yeah. And in relation to what's the process, Paul? Is it that it's going to, there's to and fro and over and back between all countries? When do we know, or how, is it the ministers then that will decide the budget, or what more will be coming, or when is there an indication that we'll be making progress on it? I think, is it Spain that's in charge at the moment? Who's pushing this, to try and, or has Ireland an opportunity when we have the head of the EU, or when we have that looking after that for the 6 months, have we the opportunity to try and drive this on? Like, some of them at the moment are gone mad in the climate crack that they want us to sign everything that we're going to be carbon neutral by 2040 nearly. At the moment, Spain, I think, is trying to get that over the line, and to be one of the things they'll be shouting about. Could we, and will we, or is it going to be a government decision that we will try and focus and get this sorted over the line while we have presidency, or into the good opportunity for a country that's really based in, or very, reliant on agriculture, that it would be in our own interest when we have basically the ball in our court and all the people coming over to us for once, that we'd sort of put them into a corner and try and get it over the line as good as we could, as fast as we can, in our own interest. Is that the thinking within the department? Well,
I think this is probably more of a government perspective now rather than just the department, because the negotiations on the budget are led by the Department of Finance and the Department of Foreign Affairs jointly.
Are they?
Yeah, they are, and that's
on the agriculture budget. On
the overall budget, the overall budget, yeah. And agriculture, we have an input to those negotiations in terms of what the outcome might be for the agriculture proportion of that. But in an overall sense, the negotiations on the overall budget are led jointly by Finance and Foreign Affairs, in cooperation with the Department of Taoiseach, and then with input from all of the relevant departments as appropriate, including ourselves. So the process is a kind of what you might call a horizontal one, because it looks at a whole different range of different headings and different funding streams within the overall budget. And that coordination, that central coordination by Finance and Foreign Affairs, means that it goes through the Committee of Permanent Representatives in Brussels at EU level. So it goes through Corper, then to the General Affairs Council, and then ultimately it feeds through to the European Council, which is heads of state. and they agree finally on conclusions then, which again, hopefully will be around late 2026, early 27. So that's the process, and that's the kind of the way in which it will happen at EU level. From the point of view of the Irish presidency, well, look, yes, if we are in a position to get it across the line, as you say, we will do that, but we'll do it in the context of our presidency role, being honest broker and trying to get a solution that satisfies all member states. The very same way that we did back in 2013. The last time we had the presidency, we achieved agreement on the budgetary framework, as well as achieving agreement on the CAP proposals, the CAP package as well. So if it falls to us during our presidency, then absolutely we'll be ready to bring that across the line. But that will very much depend on the progress that's made in the negotiations over the next 12 months, over the next 9 months or so before our presidency. How much progress the Danes make. It's the Danes that are in the seat at the moment, and the Cypriots make in the first half of next year. And we'll wait and see then at what point is the negotiation, and is it at a ripe enough stage that we can then take it across the line in our presidency.
And in relation to the changes you see, in your opinion, from the proposals that's there at the moment, and I'm looking at this with what I would say face value, there seems to be a shift away altogether from food production or being or doing things fairly good. It seems to be a shift away that it'll be no longer an entitlement you have, which I would consider that farmers that have entitlements were a property right, and they were classed as a property right, because the department, if someone passed away, if they hadn't their will made, if they hadn't said, I bequeath my everything I own, your entitlements didn't go, they went back to the National Reserve because they were classed as a property right. So they're going to be, going by the proposal that the EU is doing at the moment, they are going to be a property right that they're trying to extinguish, first of all, which I would query big time, because everyone who's as public reps are dealing with someone that unfortunately passed away, and some people have it put in their will and more don't. But if they have it in their will, it's a right that's going across to someone else, which is an interesting. Other countries mightn't have that, but we have it, which might be complicated. And what I'm saying to you is, it looks to me as we're moving away totally on the new CAP, that it's more about frogs and environment than it is about actually food. It's about climate and environment than it is about food.
Well, I suppose if you're asking my opinion on that, Deputy, I can only give you my opinion. And I think the reality is that, as I mentioned earlier on, the CAP has evolved over the last 20 or 30 years into a policy now that doesn't just focus on the provision of food, or doesn't just focus on competitiveness or just on income support, but it also now focuses on environmental sustainability and the need to achieve our climate ambitions and biodiversity ambitions and other things. And it's around, the CAP has evolved now to a policy that is aimed at all three of those elements of sustainability: economic sustainability, social, but also environmental. And we are on a path, we are on an evolution here, on a process that has resulted in, yes, more demands from an environmental perspective on farmers, but that is because the nature of the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis that we're facing, and the nature of the questions at EU level about what should we be spending our money on, are becoming more pointed. And I think it's probably fair to say that at EU level we're trying to satisfy all of those objectives. We're trying to have that economic sustainability, support farmers, provide income support in terms of supporting activity in rural areas. We're trying to make sure also that we can achieve environmental sustainability. And the CAP proposal, the regulatory proposal that's here, it continues on that suite of measures, that balance across those different components, as it has at the moment within the current CAP regulation. But it does evolve them further, and it does talk about now integrating in a bigger way maybe the Pillar 1, the traditional Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 approach. So from an environmental point of view, last time we had this green architecture where we had Pillar 1 with conditionality, and we had Pillar 1 with ecosystem services, with eco schemes, and then Pillar 2 added another layer of environmental ambition on top with acres in terms of the environmental achievement. That is still a component of the overall regulation this time, except it's been pulled into, if you like, the same fund, the 8.1 billion. But there is still a concentration on trying to further evolve that green architecture, if you like, or to develop that further. and for us then to be able to report to the EU in terms of our achievements as far as environmental sustainability is concerned. So I wouldn't say it's a complete move away from food production or from competitiveness or income support for farmers, but it is a more nuanced policy now. It's because we have to achieve far more objectives and because of the environmental sustainability. And as I mentioned earlier on, above all, I think, the level of EU funding that's going into the CAP has increasingly been reliant on over the last number of years around the environmental sustainability and the environmental ambition of spending in agriculture as well, because all areas of EU spending have had to make that adjustment and make that evolution to a more environmentally focused.
Just on one thing, you talk about environmental, and in fairness, to the acres, there was never more farmers taken into it than the last scheme.
Yeah.
And my understanding is the government, am I right in saying the government funded that? That the state funded it partly out of...
In acres, you mean, is it? On the
acres, yeah.
Yeah, it's co-funded. It's funded by the state and by the EU.
And what's the percentage each way, Paul?
Oh, I think it's 60-40, isn't it? I think 60 national, 40% EU, yeah.
Okay, so the 250 million a year is 60-40.
So we pay from national funds up front and then we recoup that from the EU.
Okay, yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Go on, Ashland.
Okay, members.
Yeah.